Sometimes there are games that you can't help but stare at. Not because they are good, not because they are innovative, and not because of how weird they are. No, you're fascinated by how much of a piece of trash they are. Hoshi or Miru Hito, or STARGAZER, is a sci-fi role-playing game released in October of 1987 for the Famicom, Japan's version of the NES. It was developed by a studio called Another, and was published by Hot B, more like Hot Balls. The game is a spiritual successor to an older title called Psychic City, which was released in 1984 for the FM7 and PC-88 families of computers, and was also published by Hot B. Both games feature similar settings, with a dystopian future and people gifted with psychic powers. The story is the following. Sometime in the future, a computer named Crew 3 rules over the giant metropolis of Ark City. This computer controls the city to ensure that order is maintained, going so far as to mind control its citizens. However, there are some people who remain unaffected by the mind control. These people are called psychics. Crew 3 sends its forces to hunt them down. The Guard Force, Ark City's army. The Deaf Psychics, elite troopers specialized in suppressing those with supernatural abilities. Hordes of monsters and robots created for combat. Those who are caught by Crew 3's forces are brought to Ark City and imprisoned. A young psychic named Minami finds himself on the run with no memories of his past. It's up to him to assemble a party of psychics and fight back against the system. Apparently, Another was actually a one-man effort. The development of a grand RPG seems like a gargantuan task for a single person. What could possibly go wrong? As it turns out, a lot went wrong. Whether it was due to budget or time constraints or straight up incompetence, Hoshi or Miru Hito is a gigantic mess. A mess with great ideas, but a mess nonetheless. The game has earned the reputation of legendary crap game over in Japan, and is quite easily one of the worst RPGs of all time. Most of the backstory is either completely irrelevant or is almost never brought up in game. It's all there in the manual. The characters have zero personality, and despite the promising sci-fi setting, the story only gets any real development at the very end, where you don't even fight a final boss of any kind, and everything gets resolved in 2 or 3 minutes. I can tell you, however, that it involves dolphins. In space. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Start a new game and you're instantly thrown into the overworld, with no intro of any sort. At least there's a town right next to you. Maybe you can obtain some information there. What do you mean you can't see the town? It's right here, can't you see? To be fair, this is explained by one of the villagers as them hiding their town, but it seems kind of ridiculous to do it right at the start of the game. Either way, before you can even reach that villager, you have noticed a whole lot of other bigger problems, like the horribly slow movement speed. Why? Just why? There are also strange pauses every couple of steps, which makes it even worse. The graphics are also offensively bad. It's hard to tell what some things even are, and the tiles clearly weren't designed for repetition. Look at the road, the grass, the walls. Games using tile sets are nothing unusual, but they typically at least try to make it so that it's not obvious that the world is made from individual square tiles. You start with no money, so there's no point in checking out the shops. One villager does mention that a nearby town is suffering from some nasty disease, so I guess we're supposed to fix that. It seems that you can synthesize a cure if you mix a couple of fruits together. But where do you get the ingredients? Well, obviously you get the fruit from trees. Which trees? This one. And this one. But not these other ones that look exactly the same. This isn't the only cryptic bollocks you'll find either. There are other entrances hidden in the world map, doors that can't be entered until some arbitrary condition has been fulfilled, important items hidden away in seemingly empty spaces. You either spend hours searching every nook and cranny, or look up a guide on the internet. The combat doesn't fare any better. Enter your first encounter and oh crap, you only have 5 HP? And the enemy just did 12 damage, I'm not dead? I have 3 HP? No, I actually have 38 HP now. You see, Minami starts with 50 HP, as shown in the status screen. What's happening is that the battle screen cuts off the last digit of the character's HP. Great. Regardless, that might not save you until you level up at least once. The game has 3 sets of enemies, and every area is assigned one of them. The problem is that you can encounter any enemy from that set, whether you just started the game or are a few hours into it. If you're lucky, you'll face the weakest enemies. If you're unlucky, you'll get completely wrecked. The tides turn after you level up a few times and get some decent weapons. HP grows at a ridiculous rate. Minami starts with 50, but immediately races to a whole 150 after the first level up. Since you're then stuck fighting the same set of enemies for a while, you'll be pretty much invincible after a few more levels. Your damage output doesn't scale at the same rate, however. Unlike your party members, enemy HP always stays in the double digits, but the damage output also raises at an incredibly slow ratio. Damage calculation is simple. Subtract the target's defense from the attacker's power. Basic attack power is calculated by taking the weapon's base power and adding to it the result of the user's skill times the weapon's multiplier. You'll start seeing the second set of enemies on the way to Arc City. Your party members will have around 30 skill by then, and the best weapon you can get until you reach Arc City is the Lagranger, with 5 base power and a bonus multiplier of 0.1. This means that your party members will deal 8 damage. The weakest enemy in the second set has 8 defense, which means you won't deal any damage. For curiosity's sake, the maximum power your basic attacks can have is 20. The Gyro SP weapon has 9.6 base power and a multiplier of 0.12. Combined with 90 skill, the highest your party can reach, you get 20.4, which rounds down to 20. The weakest enemy from the third set has 50 HP and 14 defense. Even at the absolute best conditions, your regular attacks will only deal 6 damage to the weakest late game enemy. You have some decently powerful ESP at your disposal, but random encounters are so common that you'll burn through your resources very quickly. To make things worse, there is no escape command. If you want to escape a random encounter, you need to cast the Teleport ESP, which is a single target spell. There's also a decent chance that the enemies jam your teleport and you get sent to this room, so you need to walk all the way back to where you were. To top it all off, the ESP command is the first in the list during combat. I guess listing the regular attack on top wasn't a concept back then. If you do select the ESP or item commands, however, you can't cancel it, even if you can't cast any ESP or use any item. Great. Just great. Exiting a map to the overworld will also place you at specific points, as in, if you leave this village over here, you appear next to the very first village. Every time. Technical disasters like these are why software like RPG Maker was created. So, does this game have any redeeming points? Actually, yes it does. The soundtrack is salvageable. The title screen theme is very nice, and the overworld and password themes are alright. There's also no denying that it's a very ambitious game for 1987. The game even has multiple endings. Your 4 party members have unique abilities that can be used throughout the world. The most useful is the jump ability. It allows you to jump over obstacles, which is not just useful for reaching certain areas, but also to easily traverse dungeons and other places. If you need to backtrack through a dungeon, you can just jump over the walls and everything. This is honestly fantastic. The telepathy ability can be used to read the minds of NPCs, which is also cool. While it's usually not very useful, it still adds some more flavor text to the game. I also like the idea of being able to spend varying amounts of Psycho Power, the game's MP equivalent, to unleash stronger versions of your ESP. Your party members' sprites also change as they level up, which is a neat detail. It's a shame that it was all wasted with this train wreck. But this dead horse has already been beaten way too much. Rejoice, because something good came out of all of this. Being the special kind of crap that it is, it was only inevitable that fans would create an entire remake of it. And they did a pretty decent job at it too. STARGAZER was developed by someone who goes by the name RxO and revamps every part of the original game. Besides the obvious graphical update, the gameplay has also been changed in a lot of ways. While the original game's mechanics were your standard affair of gaining experience and leveling up, STARGAZER is heavily influenced by the Saga series, more specifically the old Makai games. You might know them as Final Fantasy Legend. Your party members have a certain number of slots to equip things in. It can be weapons, ESP, items, armor, etc. Some things, like weapons and ESP, provide attacks in battle, while others provide passive bonuses, like armor and passive skills. Your party's stats will increase depending on what you do in battle. Characters have 6 basic stats. HP rises by simply taking damage during battle. PP, or Psycho Power, is used to cast ESP, and rises by spending it in battle. The more HP and PP you lose in a battle, the higher the chance that they will increase. Then there is Attack, Defense, Speed and Spirit. Defense is increased by equipping armor and accessories. Attack and Speed grow by using weapons whose power run on these stats. Spirit also grows through the usage of spirit weapons, but can also increase through the usage of ESP. For example, you start out with a black knife, which has a base power of attack times 6, so using it in battle has a chance of raising the user's attack stat. This keeps most weaker weapons useful throughout the game, even when there are stronger alternatives available. This is good because weapons break after a certain number of uses. That said, enemies drop a generous amount of money and you have enough inventory space to carry a bunch of items. You can now also earn items from enemies or treasure chests, something that was conspicuously absent from the original game. This doesn't mean you can just coast through the game without a problem though. Progressively stronger enemies show up as you advance through the remake's various areas, and while the balance isn't always perfect, it's much more challenging and balanced than the original game ever was. Okay, that's not an achievement, but it's more than good enough. STARGAZER adds quite a number of new dungeons and challenges as well, and existing ones have been completely revamped into something that's not the brain paste of a madman. Your party members' respective skills now get a lot more usage, although unfortunately, the jump ability isn't quite as powerful due to the new layouts. These abilities also now grow by using special items instead of growing through level ups. The sound department has also been redone and includes several new tracks, and they're all pretty nice, with an old school style to it. But guess what? There is actually a second fan remake. Romancing Stella Visor is inspired by not just STARGAZER, but also Romancing Saga, which is a subsection of the Saga series, which in turn is where STARGAZER takes inspiration from. It seems like it changes quite a lot, however. And I haven't played it. In fact, I didn't even know about it until 2 weeks ago. Maybe some other time. As for what happened to the companies involved with this abomination? Well, Naoki Morishima, the man in charge of Another, eventually went on to work for Toshiba EMI, a subdivision of the tech giant Toshiba focused on music. In 2007, the company changed name to EMI Music Japan after Toshiba sold off their stock. 6 years later, in 2013, it was absorbed by Universal Records Japan, becoming one of their sub-labels called EMI Records Japan. What happened to the man though, who knows. Hot B went hot bankrupt in 1993. However, its staff formed a new company, Starfish SD, and bought all of Hot B's properties. And yes, they are still alive today. They've published quite a number of games for the DS and 3DS, ranging from more casual games for girls and edutainment games, to soccer and fishing games, to hardcore dungeon crawlers. Decades have passed since the game's release, with no sequel or official remake in sight. For now. Maybe. In an interview conducted by Dengeki Online at the end of 2016, it was revealed that a company called City Connection became the holder of the game's legal rights at some point, explaining why Claris Disc, a music label owned by the company, published a compilation of soundtracks from Hot Beast games. And that is the story of the legendary crap game. With the Dragon Quest series kicking off and exploding in popularity during the late 80s, the game had the potential to be a huge success with its unique setting and plot. Unfortunately, those who were hoping for a sci-fi twist on the formula were sorely disappointed. Until Sega released Phantasy Star just 2 months later and blew it out of the water.